Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I like what I call this kind of snowballing effect of storylines, and cross-cutting parallel action is a wonderful tool for a filmmaker.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to House of Nolan. Today, we are talking about one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. You know what? Let's just stop the pretenses here. The greatest comic book movie of all time, The Dark Knight. I am here, as I am always, with my fellow co-hosts, my friends, Brandon Shea Mutala and John Mills. John, how are you doing today?
One podcast or the entire network? I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
The network can wait.
Yes.
Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good here, but I don't know, man. Howard the Duck was a pretty good comic book movie, too.
But was it the greatest comic book film of all time?
It might be. I've never seen it, actually. I don't know. So.
Okay. All right. Because I was about to say, let's all go look at Letterboxd and see if it got 5 stars.
All that I know is Alien 3 has a higher Letterboxd rating than Batman v Superman. That's all I know.
Well,
okay. Cool. All right. You're not gonna I like the movie. I like Batman v Superman, but I'm not gonna argue with you there because I love Alien 3 too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yes. When we sat down, when we all got together and said, okay, let's do a Fincher podcast. One thing that I absolutely was just fan-freaking-tastic. I get to talk about Fight Club. And with Nolan sitting down and saying, let's do a Nolan podcast, I was like, fan-friggin-tastic. I get to talk about The Dark Knight with some good friends of mine. We had such a great time talking about Batman Begins a couple of weeks ago. I am so utterly stoked to talk about this today. And one of my favorite questions is what we always talk about at the top is, how did you first encounter this film? And John, you knew this was coming.
I did.
And so I'm hoping you have your answer ready. John, how did you first encounter this film? Because obviously you saw Batman Begins first. Mm-hmm. So tell me the story. Paint me a word picture, if you will.
Well, I was, of course, totally all stoked for The Dark Knight. I was all excited for it. I remember the viral campaign that went along with it. I called the phone number for the Gotham newspaper. I looked at the clues that they put online and stuff like that, and all of that stuff, and the little news articles here and there where they talked about how the Narrows were still closed down and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool world building, and it was kind of new for the time. And I remember what happened when Heath Ledger. When news of his death came through, my brother called me immediately and was like, oh my God, Heath Ledger's dead. I was like, wait, this isn't like a publicity stunt for the movie or something? Like, how cynical do you have to be? But my first thought was like, oh no, you got to be mishearing something. This is some sort of a thing that you're not understanding. He's like, no, I swear to God. I was like, oh my gosh. But basically all of that to say that a friend of mine at work and I played hooky to catch the actual IMAX premiere, which was the Thursday opening. So we left work early and we snuck out because I had the good fortune, being in the DC metro area, of having access to actual science centers that had IMAX screens, real IMAX screens. And so it all led to that moment. We're sitting there in the IMAX theater, and it was a new enough thing in the science center where I saw it that you could only have water. They didn't have popcorn, refreshments, anything like that. They were still treating it like a science center at that point. And sitting down and saying, what's this going to be like? He shot it with IMAX cameras. What does that mean? And I still remember the opening moment of that tracking shot over the city when it revealed, and it was in that big, 6-story tall screen, and hearing just the collective gasp from the audience. And from that moment forward, it was just pure love. And I remember at the end of that showing, my friend went to the bathroom and I pulled out my cell phone and I called my brother and I said, you have to see this opening weekend. And he said, oh, I'm sure it's good. I said, no. You don't understand. You have to make plans to see this right now. You can't not see it. And that was my first showing. So
I remember that moment of awe. And I pretty much, this is one of those few movies where I still feel that awe when I watch it. That opening shot, that just like he knew exactly what he was doing with when you have the smoke and the fire, that blue flame, and there's hardly any audio underneath it, if any. And to the point where you're like, wait, is this right? Is this a little boom? You know, like you get the audio boom, you get it's bright, it's IMAX brightness, it's IMAX height, and it slaps you in the face with all of your senses. And even to this day, I'm just like, oh, my eyes just widen each time. Brandon, same question.
So I was very excited for this when it came out. I love Batman Begins, and I'd seen Batman Begins quite a few times and bought it on HD DVD, was super excited about it. And when this was coming out, my wife and we just got married just 2 months earlier. We both went and saw it, and we saw it opening weekend. And I think that this was the first time in my life ever that I saw a movie opening weekend, and I loved it so much that I had to see it again as soon as possible. And so I actually went twice on opening weekend. And, you know, for me, I don't normally do things like that. So that was pretty special for me. And I knew that this was a pretty important movie. And I really, truly loved it the first time I saw it. I thought it was fantastic.
I can't remember how many times I saw it, but it was definitely more than twice. Like this was a movie where I was like, I need to see this again as soon as possible. Like, I think I went with I think the first time I saw it, I went with a buddy of mine, and then I took my girlfriend, now wife, and then I took my parents, and then I took my sister. I was just like, yeah, I gotta invest as much time as I can in this. Like this wowed me, and it was interesting because this movie generated so much buzz, and this was people, even though like, you know, Batman Begins was a big hit and people were just like, oh man, you know, like new life has been breathed into the Batman franchise, it still didn't hit the common man. But this for some reason did. And this lead up was epic. Like people knew that this was going to be something special. People knew that this was unique. And I remember Iron Man was coming out around the same time, but before The Dark Knight. And I remember there was this sketch. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but like Robert Downey Jr. and there was some other actor, and they were like trying to convince this kid to like be excited about Iron Man and everything like that. And Downey Jr. is just like, he's like, yeah, man, Iron Man's coming out. You're like, are you excited? He's like, it'll do till Dark Knight drops. And it was so honest. I mean, obviously they scripted it that way, but it was so blaringly honest, and it was so accurate too, because I was excited for Iron Man, but it had nothing on The Dark Knight.
See, the interesting thing about that is, I don't know if this is a downer way to look at it, but from my perspective, I think that a lot of the reason why it had the buzz that it had and the anticipation for it was because of the death of Heath Ledger. I mean, I know that the people in my
completely disagree. I'm jumping in and saying completely disagree, because this was all before his death. What I'm talking about.
What you're talking about? Okay, so because from the anticipation that I knew about it, like that's what the people in the circle that I knew were talking about. They're like, this is the role where Heath Ledger went so far off the edge that he killed himself. Like that was the general impression of people that I knew in my circle. And they were all fascinated to jump into this movie to see this performance of Joker.
And thankfully, two things were wrong with that sentiment.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know that this was the discussions that were going on. So no,
that has been something that like a lot of people heard in 2008 and still believe. And it's Heath Ledger did not kill himself.
No.
As well as he did not fall into a depression because of how deep he went into his character.
Correct.
His entire life he battled insomnia to the nth degree, and he was in communication with his family up until the night that he died, and it was a bad cocktail of drugs, and it was an accidental overdose. And this has been reported on several times over the past decade. It's one of those rumors that, and I'm not Brendan, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the audience. Yeah. It's one of those things that just continually repeats itself. And as we continue to record, we'll talk about a few more things that have rumors that have no basis in reality. John.
Well, just in terms of that, I'm glad that I'm really glad we got to that, because to Brandon, you're not completely off the rails wrong, because I think that there was a lot of buzz for Dark Knight. I think there was a lot of steam going into it, like Tristan is saying. But I do think that the mystique of having one of the lead actors who had so much buzz build up about him, and then those urban legends lay on top of it, was more of a hook for people who weren't, the casual person who's like, maybe I'll see Dark Knight, but then that buzz gets added in and everybody's suddenly like, no, I gotta see this. I gotta see this.
That's why it reached the people beyond the fandom. Right. So, and I mean,
it had a big ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I mean, I tweeted out today, like I haven't seen this movie since theaters. Okay. Like I was saying before, I just never got around to them again. I watched it yesterday. I watched it again this morning, and I tweeted out today. I'm like, I really think that Heath Ledger's Joker may be the greatest performance in cinema history, like ever captured on film. Like, I think it is absolutely fantastic. There are so many little amazing moments in this, and I think people coming into that, seeing it, they're like, it just kind of fed into that urban legend,
Yes, and a lot of his affectations that he built into the character are brilliant, like, the fact that he keeps licking the sides of his mouth because of the scars and everything like that. That is an incredible attention to detail. And there's, what he did with his voice, everything. Yes. And it's interesting because this dovetails into, I remember I had to, there were some people I was hanging out with at the time. And I remember one of them was so convinced that it was a dangerous performance and the movie should have been rated R because there were going to be so many Joker-inspired crimes and killings and all of that stuff. And I remember looking at this person and saying, did you actually watch the movie, though? Oh, yes, it was brilliant. It was terrific. I said, what about that performance makes you think that it's going to be this giant societal trigger for mayhem and anarchy? And so I became the person standing in the breach there in those arguments. But I think it at least speaks to how powerful a performance, like you're saying, that it is. And it is such an incredible performance because it is one of those things where no matter how you slice it, the editing, the music, the cinematography, Christian Bale, everybody, everything is clicking in this film perfectly. And then Ledger is that little, that little accelerant that suddenly sets it all on fire. No matter what, I was going to walk out of this film saying, hot damn, that was an amazing experience. But then Ledger ratchets it up to the point where you say, I'm never going to forget the first time I saw this film.
Normally we ask this question a little bit later, but I'd like to start it at the top. When was the first time you saw Chris Nolan in this film? What was the shot? What was the editing? What was the performance? What screamed Nolan to you right off the bat? Brandon.
It's got to be that opening shot leading up to the building, right? Right there, the cut to the inside, right? Just the framing of it and everything like this. The pacing of that whole opening scene is so well done, and I think it resonates far into his work, going all the way into Tenet now. Like he's really got a groove on, and the timing of this is what I would really say is a Christopher Nolan piece right at the beginning. So maybe it's the editing, maybe it's just the shots themselves, but the whole timing of this opening sequence is just pure Nolan.
John, what about you?
I gravitate toward that opening sequence. You can immediately feel it. You brought up like with Insomnia that tracking shot of the airplane. You see that's going to pay off. There's such a measured. It's hard for me. I don't have the technical terminology to say it, but the way that opening tracking shot starts,
the slow push in.
Yes, yeah, right. But it comes all the way down to, I can look at that shot and know it's a Christopher Nolan shot because of how fast the camera's moving, how steady it is, and how to this day, even though I have this film memorized, I'm still, wait, which window is this going to happen from? Because it's framed so perfectly, that window that blows out, that it doesn't have any of the traditional movie cheats where the camera leans into it or it starts turning or anything like that. The camera doesn't give you any hint where the action is about to happen. And then after they swing across and you have that push into Ledger standing on the street corner, and then as things start speeding up, there's still that tremendous control of the camera. There's never a sense of anything out of place, even though all of this stuff is so frenetic. And so, I'm just going to have to agree, like, that it's right there, right at the opening. It's like, that's Christopher Nolan at work right there.
Yeah, it's hard not to say that.
Right.
Especially looking back on it,
Mm-hmm.
And also with how much Chris Nolan has used IMAX since. So The Dark Knight was 37 minutes of IMAX footage, and I think Rise is twice that.
Yes.
I can't remember. It's something crazy like that. And when you look at how he utilizes the IMAX camera and his framing and his tracking shots, his dolly shots, his push, everything like that, like the shot very much expresses how different the movie is from Batman Begins, who Nolan is as a director, and Wally as a photographer. Mm-hmm. And when you compare Batman Begins and Dark Knight back to back, not only is the tone different of terms of what they're trying to talk about, what they're trying to express from a story standpoint, but just the color scheme, the editing, the fighting, just like even the look of Gotham. Like, even though both were shot in Chicago, Dark Knight looks like Chicago, but he does a really great way of editing around key landmarks.
Mm-hmm. See,
and it's just like there's even more blue in it, like, which they signify with the opening, bat logo. Like, even in Batman Begins, you get like deep brown and oranges mixed with black, and then in Dark Knight you have royal blue and black in contrast, just like you do in the rest of the shot. There's so much more blue in it as opposed to orange and brown like in Batman Begins, and you get that in Dark Knight Rises too, with more stark white and stark black.
I think it's also, I'm glad you said something about shooting around the landmarks, because I know Chicago fairly well myself. And one of the things I wanted to ask you as somebody who lives in that area is, did it ever take you out? Because I know the locations where they're shooting and stuff like that, but I was always amazed with the fact, I'm like, he's giving you just the corner of the pier there. He's not focusing on it. So you can't say, oh, hey, I went down there this weekend. It's just a little bit off, as opposed to in Batman Begins when he's standing on the newspaper building's parapet, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at it and you're like, oh, I know, I know where that building is, like that sort of thing.
As someone who has spent the last, decade in the area, and who used to live in Chicago, now I live just outside. Now it is pretty easy for me to say, like, oh, that's right off the canal on, like on that street. Like, and of course there's like Lower Wacker. Yeah, that's, I drive down there constantly.
What I really love about the use of the city and stuff like that, and sure, that where the truck flips over, it's very obvious which part of the city you're in if you've been there and stuff like that. But when he does go to the sub street and stuff like that, it's moving quickly enough that it doesn't take you out of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, see, as someone who is who lives around the area and who lived downtown and everything like that, it doesn't really take me out of it. It just kind of goes like, oh, cool, the Cinnabon. Like, I've been to that Cinnabon. Like, it's like not in a bad way.
Well, the thing is, so long as we're talking about the streets and in the city and everything like that, I just want to say also that this is, because we've talked about how Nolan's building his vocabulary as a filmmaker, and he's building his skill, and you can see it build throughout everything, and the stakes keep getting higher, and he keeps getting more and more elaborate. This was, there are very few movies where I remember the audience reactions as starkly as I do this. But after that whole chase scene, right? When he busts out in the Bat Pod and everybody was like, whoa, the truck flips over, the whole audience is into everything. Bat Pod goes up and spins around and lands. There was like a smattering of applause in the audience. And then when the Gordon reveal happens, I actually heard, people hooting, like, yeah, all right. And I say all that to say, and I've said this before, Nolan gets pegged sometimes as, a distant emotional experience with his films, right? A little bit technical. That's a complaint that I've heard, at least. And I always look to The Dark Knight as an example of it's so rare to experience an audience so into it as what happened when I saw The Dark Knight. And I really think this is the moment where, when you look at this film, this is really where he truly arrives for everybody. Like, I think he's there in The Prestige, but not everybody plugged into The Prestige. Once he gets here, he's created a mass market experience that is cathartic for 500 people at a time. And that's a really special thing. And I think that's why this is where he transcends to the next level as a filmmaker.
Was this the first movie that like used IMAX in the film? I know that we had like 70 millimeter road shows and things like that in the past, right? But I mean, like, as far as modern filmmaking, is this one of the first movies that used IMAX?
In terms of a feature, in terms of, a large picture. Budget feature filmmaker, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's part of the reason too, is because he did make it an event, and this is why it registered with so many people. Because there's so much about this movie that kind of resonated with people and made it an experience, But I mean, like, the interesting thing about this and resonating with so many people is it's like this IMAX thing that we were talking about here is like, for me, this is not a good thing for film. And this is probably like a controversial opinion from what I'm talking about you guys here, right? So for me, the problem with this is like watching it on home video now, I find it a very distracting experience to have constantly changing aspect ratios on a movie that I'm watching. Okay. And so not only that, but I mean, IMAX is designed to be watched on a large screen. And now that we're watching this on home video, we're not watching it on giant screens anymore. So like the effect of what you're getting out of it isn't the same thing, and it isn't there. To me, this is where the pretentious Nolan starts, because he's like, I'm the guy that's going to make these crazy movies, and I'm going to get as crazy as I can, that I'm going to start using IMAX. And I understand IMAX is expensive. It's a very expensive film format. But it's like, if you're going to film a movie in IMAX, then film the movie in IMAX and don't go back and forth. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, Tristan, I can defer to you. I have my whole little, list in my head that I'm going to attack Brandon with, and I'm not going to be gentle either.
Okay, then let me add one more point before you guys go. Okay, so then this is the thing when something like this becomes popular, is then you start getting the knockoffs, and then you're also losing the experience, because then we get the not real IMAX formats for people to watch this stuff in.
Okay. I'm going to let Tristan go first, because probably our lists of responses are going to go over. But that would be like me faulting Fruity Pebbles for the fact that Malt-O-Meal sells 5-pound bags of rip-off Fruity Pebbles. Yeah, they ripped it off and it's not as good, but that doesn't make Fruity Pebbles any less of a delicious diabetic treat.
That's right. But Fruity Pebbles is not the same thing, and the Dark Knight movie is the Dark Knight movie.
Right. I was just saying that you blaming people copycatting it for diluting the experience isn't fair to throw back on the Dark Knight, because success always breeds imitation.
And also the idea that you can't pioneer a use of something that's a better quality because it's going to be diluted as, like more than a decade later. That doesn't seem fair either.
And on top of that, it's not Nolan's fault that IMAX sold out and is, saying, IMAX experience movies when it's Limax and it's not the actual format. Like that was IMAX's decision to sell out. That wasn't Nolan's fault to do that.
Yeah, you're right. But like the decision comes off of the back of this, right? Like,
But the thing is, I can't fault him, and I can't fault the film for that at all.
Is the IMAX experience necessary for a movie like this? Is it needed for something like this?
I don't think it's a question of necessary or unnecessary. Kubrick would flip aspect ratios during films as well, and I think what's amazing about The Dark Knight, and again, a true testament to Pfister, because we're going to heap as much praise as we want on Nolan, because this is about Nolan and everything. But the simple fact is, I saw this in the big Science Center IMAX presentation, And then I saw it in a regular movie theater where everything was masked down to the same aspect ratio through the entire thing. And it was just as enjoyable an experience. Was the IMAX experience more mind-blowing? Abso-friggin-lutely. Is this still an incredible film if they mask it down? Abso-friggin-lutely. And I think that is more a testament to, that's not pretentiousness, that's not anything. That's somebody who has such a skill set and is surrounded by people with such a skill set that they can do something like that. And even if somebody lives somewhere where they can't have that experience that I did, it's still an incredible film for them to watch.
And also, when you think about, like, there's 6 major action sequences in this movie that are shot on IMAX. And when you're in that scene and when you have the IMAX aspect ratio as well as the quality, because for me, the pixel quality is far more important than the aspect ratio when it comes to IMAX. That's just my personal opinion. You get absolutely enveloped in the scene. Now, there are a few times when within a scene, I will give credence to what you're talking about in a minor form. And I'll use an example here with the hospital exploding scene, when that blows up. So that was shot in IMAX, and that you have this beautiful, crisp shot of the Joker walking away from the hospital, and it's just absolutely picture perfect. It's framed quite well, and then all of a sudden we cut to a random reaction shot from the Dead Zone guy from the Breakfast Club. And it's shot on 35 millimeter. Thank you, Anthony Michael Hall. It's shot on 35 millimeter and 2.39 aspect ratio. That really takes me out of it, because we're like, we have this great sequence, and then all of a sudden we change quality, we change aspect ratios, and boom, it's in and out, and it's just weird. It's discombobulating.
Yeah.
But when within an action sequence, like with the SWAT chase, or with the opening sequences, or any other action scene where it's just like IMAX cut, IMAX cut, and then once we breathe as an audience, and then we move on and change scenes and we change aspect ratios, I don't care at all. I don't care in the least. But when you change within a scene, yeah, I'll give you that it can be distracting. But one thing that I want to talk about is filmmakers, event filmmakers, like Christopher Nolan. And I'm not saying that pretentiously. I'm saying that just factually. He views himself that way. Other people view himself that way. Like, when you go to his movies, it's for an event. He tailors that experience for the theatrical experience. Now, great. If you want to watch a Christopher Nolan movie at home, like on DVD, Blu-ray, on your phone, on your laptop, digital, disc, whatever, if you buy your own print and put up your own 35 millimeter projector, fine. That's up to you. All he cares about is that first initial watch in the theater. And so if he can give you way more pixels on a 6-story screen that blows you away, great. That's what he's there for, because that's your memory. That's the memory you make, is that theater going experience. And so when you go back to your home and watch it on your crappy 13-inch TV or your super expensive, super big TV that I got, and you can recreate that experience from either your memory or from your tailored theatrical experience at home. And I think that's where you got to look at it from his perspective, why he uses the IMAX camera.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I agree with what you're saying. I absolutely do. So, but no, it's an interesting question. Right. So you go back to a movie where they used to film films in 70 millimeter, right?
They still do. Some people do.
Yeah, they do.
And,
Tarantino just did one, right? He did Hateful Eight in 70 millimeter. If you're making the event, then make the whole thing the event, right? Not just
so it's either like this. You're gonna. That's the thing, though, man. Like, it's like you can't film an entire movie in IMAX, especially in 2008. And so it was either like all or nothing. I mean, you gotta dip your toe in. You gotta see, like, no one's gonna finance like an entire IMAX film that's 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like in 2008, that's just not going to happen. And so you got to test the waters. You got to see if it works.
And I still get back to the fact that I know plenty of people who didn't view this in IMAX, who didn't see a changing aspect ratio at all, because that is a select subset of a group that is going to go in search of that, especially in 2008. I mean, when I say I played hooky from work, I invented a reason so that, like, I mean, I don't know if the statute of limitations is gone, but I invented a reason, and my friend at work invented a separate reason, and we made sure we left at separate times, and we made sure that things were like, and we drove 45 minutes out to a movie theater to go see it. Most people didn't do that. A lot of people that I knew at the time had no idea that IMAX was even an option, like that they could even go to a movie theater there. Like, so there's that added aspect to it. And again, I get back to the fact that this is such a magnificently constructed film that people who never saw it in that IMAX theater experience and who only saw it masked to 2.39 to 1 still had an amazing time.
It's still a great movie.
Adore this film. Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's one of those things where maybe you could make the argument of like, well, you should sell 2 different DVD sets and, a person can choose the changing aspect ratios or not. And I think they have sets like that out there or something like that. But I really do think that what we're discussing here is a special experience that, especially back then, movie nerds would have gone in specific search of, as opposed to John Q. Public saying, oh, well, yes, let's go down to the Science Center and go check out The Dark Knight. Like, that's a totally different audience.
Even today, like in as we're recording this, like we'll go to fellow Nerd Party member Mike Schindler and we'll say, which version do we need to see of this? Like, do we need to see the 70 millimeter version? Do we need to see the IMAX version? If we see the IMAX version, which theater do we need to go to? Because which one is laser? Which one is Limax? Which one is actual film? And normal people don't give a crap about this.
Not at all. Not in the least. They want to make sure their popcorn is fresh and their seats recline. Mm-hmm. Those are like the 2 major considerations.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on from this. Let's move more about the warrants of the actual story itself. So, John, I want to know from you, how did you view the messaging of this film in contrast to Batman Begins? Because with Batman Begins, obviously it was a lot about fear. Yeah. Overcoming fear, challenging your fears. What did you think about The Dark Knight in realms of what Nolan and his brother were trying to say about chaos?
Well, I mean, I definitely saw, that there is still that fear. The Joker hits a different sort of fear and panic response. Whereas in Batman Begins, they're trying to induce it chemically. The Joker is just a natural agent of chaos, right? And I, this is something that I hold on to because after I saw it, the 4th or 5th time or something like that, I really did start thinking really about this one aspect that, and again, this is just my own take on everything and all of that. What I saw was something that was, at its core, something that was so incredibly, for lack of a better term, almost religious from my perspective. I actually, I wrote a blog a long time ago called The Devil in the Dark Knight. And so there are aspects of this sort of secularizing of the idea of Job, that the devil and God are testing, the virtuous man in Dent. And then, we end with an absolution scene of Batman taking on his sins, at the end of the film. But I think that the major arc that I hold on to with this gets back to the fact that Nolan has been very upfront about the fact that the 1978 Superman really molded how he approached superhero topics. And there are elements of the Long Halloween in here from the comic books, and there are elements from this. Nobody needs to read a damn word of any of those inspiration points. It's great if you do, but you don't have to. But what I really think clicks here is there's still that echo of that 1978 Superman and the line from Jor-El where he says, "They're a good people, Cal. They wish to be. They only need someone to show them the way." And so there's very much, I think, that idea of, as Harvey Dent says in this, it's always darkest before the dawn. And Batman, Bruce Wayne says, "I wanted to inspire people." And in the beginning, Alfred is saying, well, that's what you're doing. You're inspiring them. He said, not like this, though. And so the Joker becomes that opportunity for him to, show that his example has meant something and changed the hearts of a city that, when we first meet it, is, as Ra's al Ghul says, so insanely corrupt that they've infiltrated it down to the lowest levels of everything to help upend it. And here it is in this. Somebody comes along trying to do essentially the same thing, but because Batman has been there as an example, it doesn't work. He's shown people that there can be a better way and a better life for things. So I think that's the messaging for it, that, be a good person, be an example, and you can inspire others to do the same thing.
Brandon, what did you think about the fall of the White Knight compared to within the triad that was the Dark Knight, the White Knight, as well as the cop? Did you like that dynamic? Did you like that they were focusing on all three? Did you like that Gordon got so much screen time? What did you think about those three being the main focus of the story, as well as the morality tale of the Dark Knight?
Well, I thought it was very interesting, and honestly, that's kind of more what I think the message of the story is. The message, there are a lot of messages in this movie, and there are a lot of very good messages. I really, really love Gary Oldman in this role as Gordon. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I was a person that, so this was the time when I was getting into Batman, and so when Batman Begins came out, I was reading those things like The Long Halloween and Batman Year One and all of those stories, and seeing how he looked compared to how Gordon looked in those was really fascinating. But I thought it was interesting that they chose Harvey Dent for this story, but I was frustrated that they ended up killing him by the end of it. So to me, that was not a satisfying end for the character, but I do get what they were going for in the story, because I think Aaron Eckhart did a really good job. And, Two-Face is a villain that we, an antagonist that we see more of in the Batman mythology, right? But it's really fascinating to see, because the whole story here is, what does it take to make a good person go bad? And even Batman himself almost gets to that point in this movie. Two-Face ends up getting there because he loses the woman that he loves, right? So I love that they got this, and I love that there's this kind of flipping morality between the characters in this movie.
All it takes is one bad day.
Yes, all it takes is one bad day.
I'm glad that you mentioned Gary Oldman, because I think that he's an actor who doesn't get enough recognition for what he brings as Gordon sometimes. Ledger overshadows everybody, period. End of sentence. It's unavoidable. But his performance when he is, throughout the whole film, he's fantastic. But when he is laying there in the burned out building, pleading with Harvey not to hurt his family, right? To this day, it still puts tears in my eyes, because I'm completely there with him. I completely believe him. Now, a lot of that has to do with, Zimmer's music in that moment and Aaron Eckhart's performance, and they're all playing off of each other so perfectly. But when he sits there and he says, "Harvey, I'm sorry for everything,"
just the way he says it,
yes,
just that specific line, just when he takes that moment in between, he's like, "I'm sorry for everything." It's just I'm getting chills just talking about it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. To the fact that he has one tear coming down, and you completely believe his desperation in that moment. He's pleading with everything that he has to get Harvey to stand down, and it's one of those things where, as much as you can say, oh, well, people don't love it as much without Ledger, I think Oldman also brings that, that certain something that you can't put your finger on, where he inhabits that role. And the thing is, Oldman has always been that actor. He's always been magnificent. And to have him as a part of this, as that grounding force, as that very human Gordon that is necessary to play off of these larger than life figures. I think that Nolan gets a lot of justifiable credit for the fact that it's set in the quote unquote real world. He doesn't push your believability, but so far he doesn't ask too much of you. but without that character that really grounds it, that you can plug into and understand what he's doing and saying, this film doesn't work the same way.
And one person who definitely doesn't get enough credit specifically for that scene that you're talking about is Melinda McGraw, who played Barbara Gordon. She does a phenomenal job. She doesn't have that many lines, but her presence is huge. It'd be so easy just to be frantic and, for lack of a better word, hysterical. And I know that that word has sexist connotations, but it would be so easy to downgrade that character to just being screaming. But she brings this raw emotional presence that even if you're not a parent, that you can relate to. It's just it is just primal, and she gave everything that she could in that role and in that moment, and I just hats off to her every single time I watch it. She's Gordon, Oldman playing Gordon does a phenomenal job that gives me chills. She is the one that brings me almost to tears because I feel for what she's feeling in that moment. And it's just in that scene, everybody's firing on all cylinders. I feel like this is one of those movies where if you're even just a little bit behind, you're miles behind because everyone has to bring their A game.
And I think that gets back to what we were talking about with The Prestige, where, Scarlett Johansson was just a little bit behind everybody, which is not a knock on her, but like you're saying, just a little bit becomes more pronounced when you compare. And so you're right. That performance is great. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say it. I'm going to start the fight now. Here it comes.
I really thought that
we
weren't that we could avoid this.
I'm putting on the brass knuckles right here. Maggie Gyllenhaal. I want somebody to go in with a deep fake and put her into Batman Begins because I loved her performance as Rachel Dawes. I think it's terrific. I think she's perfect. And you can never take that away from me.
You know what? That's great. That's fine. I'm not trying to take it away from you. I don't want to take it away from you. I'm not here, nor have I ever been present to go into your mind and rob you of joy. I would never want to be the thief of joy. I hate thieves of joy. Those people are monsters. I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Heck of a preamble right here. Go on. Get to it.
He just likes to see the world burn.
Yes, exactly.
I hate this performance. I hate her performance so much. I never believe a single word that comes out of her mouth.
Wow.
My wife and I chuckle almost every single time she delivers a line. Like, oh man,
nonsense.
I should have written this down, like on these specific, like when she's like, Harvey, I know these briefs backwards. Like Sarah and I we just lose it every single time because her delivery is horrible. Or like, it's just like she doesn't even try to be the same character that Katie Holmes is being. And I'm not saying imitate Katie Holmes. I'm saying be Rachel Dawes. She doesn't even pretend to be the Rachel Dawes that we saw in Batman Begins. It's not even close.
She's an older and more accomplished Rachel Dawes. So there you go.
9 months later, it's 9 months later.
Mm-hmm. Is it only 9 months later?
In universe, it is only 9 months later.
Is it really only 9 months later?
If not, it's like a year.
How did Gordon's kids age so quickly then?
And then later, like when they're surrounded by the drums, like the drums of petroleum and everything, like she's like what's going on with you? What's happening? Describe what's going on with me.
That is such nonsense. That is such nonsense.
Go back and watch it. Go back and watch it.
I'm sorry. I didn't just rewatch it. I didn't just rewatch it. You're right. I just took a nap during that scene. I gave you a master
class in imitation. That is what just happened.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to go get my DVD right now. I'm sorry, my Blu-ray right now. I don't have a 4K like you do. Maybe it's a different experience in 4K. I don't know. Maybe it's
it could be.
It could be.
I have more pixels, so I can see truly into her soul.
Okay, there you go. Exactly.
Can I be the divider on this?
You can cast.
You can chime in.
I'll be the divider. I think both of them are trash.
I'm not a fan of either one. I'm not saying Katie Holmes is amazing.
Neither
I'm not
are
saying
good.
that at all.
I don't know. Neither are good. I agree. I gotta agree with Tristan on Gyllenhaal here.
Honestly. Feel free.
So
knock
I don't
yourself out.
I think she's so dry on this one here. But honestly, I think Katie Holmes is dry too. I think the character is just a dry character.
Disagree. Disagree. I believe that this Rachel Dawes is a Rachel Dawes that Bruce Wayne could be in love with.
I think they should deep fake Sofia Coppola into this movie.
No, okay.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So
Oh.
you know, in The Dark Knight Rises, when he picks up a framed photo of Rachel
Uh-huh.
and it's Maggie Gyllenhaal, I always thought it would have been freaking hysterical if they used a photo of Katie Holmes instead.
Well, all I have to say is this director that we've united to have a whole podcast series about agreed with me. So, I'd say that's a pretty big vote in my favor too. So there you go.
I think it's a bad performance. I maybe I'm leaning towards what Brandon is saying. Like maybe I just don't like the character. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think that's nuts. I really do. I think she works on every level. I like her better than Katie Holmes in the role. I like the character better in this film. I think that she is more naturally a part of the storyline. She doesn't feel forced. The only question I have is why does she have such a habit of dating DAs? Because she had just broken up with the DA.
I
in
hated that in
Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't care for. Although maybe he had asked her out and she was like no, or whatever. But yeah,
Actually, I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was in Batman Begins. Like that he tried and she said no.
Yeah, we've been through this before or something like that. But no, I mean, I just obviously I disagree with you guys, and many people do, so that's fine. That's fine.
I miss Vicky Vale. That's what I miss.
Oh my gosh, Vicky was amazing.
Really?
I loved Vicky. Yeah, what's wrong with Vicky?
All right, no, I'm just saying.
She was funny. She was competent.
If Mike was here, it'd be Chase, right? Meridian. He'd want Chase.
Oh,
Meridian.
Chase Meridian? No, knowing Schindler, he would probably pick whoever Ellie McPherson was in Batman and Robin.
Mike's the one who's championed for a Chase Meridian TV series that has nothing to do with Batman. It's just her counseling people.
It's just her counseling.
Oh, that doesn't
It's like
sound
an
like Mike at all.
HBO show that only gets like 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, something. 3 episodes a season. It's on the air for 15 years. Yeah.
Okay, can I just jump on here with another hot take, I think, here? So I think this movie is a little bit too long, and I think there's a couple things in here that I think they could cut out that I don't think are necessary. The major thing that I think is unnecessary and feels weird coming in so late is that that guy that's working on doing the research for the company and then tries to bribe them and then goes on TV with saying, I know who Batman is and whatnot, and then Bruce Wayne saves him and stuff. I'm like, to me, that whole section is completely unnecessary. And I think the callback to Scarecrow at the beginning is an unnecessary callback, and it's trying to throw too much into the film.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Brandon, I'm so glad you brought that up because I friggin' hated that cameo. It was completely pointless. It was worthless. It was unneeded. It was also like it felt like a betrayal of the character to me because I loved his cameo in The Dark Knight Rises. I thought it was great. I loved seeing him as the judge. I love his delivery, and I thought it would have been that much more impactful if we just saw him in the Dark Knight Rises and not in The Dark Knight because it feels weird that he's in the mask, but yet he's just like walking around with it, like wearing a suit and wearing a mask, like that's his mask now. And then also that line delivery at the end of the scene, not my diagnosis.
Yeah.
Oh God, give me a break.
Yeah.
I did not like that at all.
Gonna have to respectfully disagree again, guys. I really liked it. I actually thought that when he shoots the gas at the imitation Batman, was really worked well. I'm not going to sit here and prosecute it. You guys can have a problem with it if you want to, but I don't. So
I did like the line where he's like, where he says that's not him, and then he goes, "That's more like it." I did like that.
But the thing is, I like the idea of the Scarecrow becoming this tie-through character who's always there because it's it just speaks to that whole thing again of Batman's his whole code is supposed to be that he doesn't kill. He has one rule: he doesn't kill. So it makes sense that this guy keeps getting churned out by the corrupt system, and Batman keeps putting him away, and he keeps getting out, and it's like, okay, here we go again. All right, let me take you out again.
See, I don't remember The Dark Knight Rises because I've only seen it once in theaters, so I don't remember him showing up in that one here. So maybe my opinion will change after the next film. But what did you think about the guy that worked at Wayne Enterprises there?
Oh, Mr. Reese?
Yeah, Reese. Thank you.
I like Mr. Reese because I think that it plays into the theme that Batman is, well, not just Batman, but the idea that even one person's life, because that's one thing that goes through it, is like even one person's life is worth it for Bruce Wayne to put everything on the line. And it's an interesting contrast because, of course, people are saying, oh, because you won't take off your mask, that's why the Joker is still killing people. When it's like, no, fools, do you honestly think if Batman takes off his mask that the Joker's going to stop doing what he's doing?
Right.
You know, it's a very, I think, necessary contrast to show that Bruce Wayne is not taking it lightly what is going on at the time, or the fact that the Joker, again, reveals he's just throwing anything out there to create chaos. Reese is up there because he's like, oh, hey, Batman, take off your mask and I'll stop everything. So Reese goes up there and he's about to reveal himself, and the Joker calls in and says, no, kill him. And like, it's that whole thing of like how easy it is to manipulate the crowd. Once you get in people's minds, they're very easy to, manipulate once they're in that group frenzy sort of thing. And so, no, I think that even if you subtract all of that sort of like heavy, analysis sort of thing that I'm reading into it and everything, the scene where he says, I want $10 million.
Wonderful.
Morgan Freeman's delivery is like, your theory is that your client, one of the richest, most powerful men in the world, dresses up at night to beat up criminals, and your plan is to blackmail him? Good luck. Like, it's a magnificent scene.
Right.
And I love how he goes right back to his paper, doesn't even give it a second thought. He's just like, let's see how this goes. I have to agree with John on this one. Like, initially I was kind of like, is it too long? Is it not a throughway? But it's necessary in terms of story structure and also progression when it comes to manipulating the masses, and also it props up the drama for the hospital storyline about that. That's how we get to the hospital. That's how we get to the danger of the hospital. That's why it explodes. That's why we have the hostage situation later on. Like, it's a catalyst for so many things. Like, so much, like, it may seem like a nothing thing at the beginning, but it builds and builds and builds and snowballs into something larger, and it feeds into so many different story plot points and character plot points.
But the thing is, it's also Nolan being the magician again, because one of the cop names that's on there, cops with relatives in hospitals. He's giving you that little tell. If you're paying attention, Ramirez's name is on that. Gordon says something in the beginning. Shouldn't you be taking care of your mother? He's like, oh, she's back in the hospital. And then Ramirez in the hospital, and then it goes to the hospital. So there's that. He keeps putting it right in front of you, just like when Tristan pointed out in The Prestige, the little kid, where's his brother? Like, he throws it right out there in front of you how this is going to tie together. But you don't get it till the second go through where you're like, oh, Ramirez's name is already on there.
Now, like, I understand that this builds into this story, but it's like they could have written whatever they want. And to me, the character is just a bit too much. I don't know what I would have written in place. I'm not a good writer, right? But I think it could have been something different. It just, this one character just feels like a bit too much. That's all I'm saying. So it could have been something else that tied it in a different way.
Can I tell you one of the funniest things I remember? Because, everybody always runs off with fan theories and everything like that. That one of the fan theories
I know what you're going to say.
He was going to turn into the Riddler because his name,
Mr. Reese, Reese,
right? That he was going to turn into the Riddler, and that was always one of my favorite ones to debunk. Where I was like, really? Do you really think that? Okay.
My favorite thing, and this wasn't even, I don't think this was a fan theory. This was just a straight up rumor that is just absolutely bonkers wrong, was that when Heath Ledger, when he was the Joker and he's destroying the hospital and he hits the detonator and then it doesn't explode right away, that Heath Ledger did a little improv, a little soft shoe, like trying to make sure that they bridged the time because the timing went off. And I was like, that I've heard that so many times in the fandom. I've heard it so many times online. I've heard it from random people. It is such utter nonsense. It is so utterly ridiculous from a filmmaking standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from a demolition expert and certification standpoint. It is. There's no way in Blue Perfect hell that there was a delay and it was accidental and they had one shot, they had one opportunity to get it and they missed it. There's no way that Nolan or anybody worth their salt on that film set would have lit that fly, even especially in the city of Chicago.
Well, right, and I just want to back you up with that because it always makes me think of that rumor. Always makes me think of when they shot T2. Like one of the jokes was when the building blows up in Terminator 2. They had, I don't know, 3 billion camera crews, or they had it from every possible angle that they could do it, right? And Cameron's like walking around in the set, like, we get one shot at this, guys. That's it. We can't do this again. Everybody make sure everything's all set. And they go through, okay. And then one of the guys says, when they yell cut, he goes, "Oh, were we supposed to be rolling?" Like, and everybody has a good laugh and everything like that. But that just speaks to the whole thing you're talking about, where do they honestly think that they had gone to the lengths of wiring this building that was scheduled for demolition? They have actors on set. They have all of these things that could go wrong, and something doesn't go off. And you don't think somebody would have swooped in and been like, "Okay, Heath, you come behind the camera, please. We'll fix this in post or something." There's no way.
It bothers me so much.
You guys are involved
like,
in all these rumors. I never heard any of these things.
Oh yeah.
It is everywhere. It was all over the place. I think I heard it whenever The Dark Knight was mentioned in conversation. I heard it for like the first 5 years.
It's funny.
Yeah. Yep.
No, we did talk about criticism a little bit. Like, Brandon, you mentioned some things that you didn't particularly like, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk because I kind of teased this a couple episodes ago, like when we were talking about Batman Begins, about how I talked about how I'm rating The Dark Knight 5 stars because it's amazing. It's the greatest comic book film of all time. It was the first superhero film to reach $1 billion. It's amazing. And Batman Begins is rated 4.5 in my mind. But I feel like there is more wrong with The Dark Knight than there is Batman Begins. But the reason why I can still give it a 5 stars is because this is next level filmmaking. This is next level storytelling. Like, what works in here works better than so much that works in Batman Begins. You mentioned a little bit what I didn't really particularly like, and John, you and I argued a little bit more on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one thing that I absolutely 100% would remove if I had editorial responsibility would be the cell phone storyline and how it integrated into his Batsuit. Once we hit that point where he's utilizing this visual echolocation to find the Joker, and then feels the need to integrate it into his optics in his suit. Lucius Fox is narrating what Batman is supposedly supposed to be seeing, and then he says, "It's like 2 levels up, they're coming down for you." Why does he need to see that in echolocation and swirl it around? And then when it cuts out, it's just like, oh, we're rebooting the system. Batman's just like searching around like, "Oh God, what do I do? What do I do? Open your freaking eyes, you stupid bat." It was just ridiculous. Like, that is the point where where a friend of mine said, "Oh, I didn't really dig on The Dark Knight too terribly much because it felt like too much plot and not enough story." I thought it was nonsense, and it is nonsense. But that scene specifically, I tend to agree. It's too much plot, not enough story. It got ahead of itself. It got too big for its britches. It started to be a little bit over the top for no good reason. When Nolan could have simplified, made it more streamlined, and it wouldn't affect a single thing in the negative. It wouldn't have made it wouldn't have made it less than to simplify it and just have, do the echolocation thing, like do the voice pinpointing thing. That's fine. Like, do that storyline. But don't do the visual aspect of it or integrate it into the suit because it's silly. We're getting into silly territory.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, it feels weird to have Morgan Freeman narrating this, it's really weird because if Batman's seeing this, why does he need to be narrated? You know?
Exactly.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's really, really strange. So I agree with you 100% on that.
I'm going to politely disagree again. I really enjoy the sequence. I think that one of the things that I really enjoy about it is when it does cut out. I remember seeing it for the first time, and most of the time when I watch it now, when it cuts out, it's still like it's a really
I thought my Blu-ray broke.
Fun. when I saw it in the theater and everything was and it went dark, the whole audience, like, there was this moment of terror where we all thought suddenly the projector broke or something like that. Like, there was this. everybody was ready to go nuts because it was like, oh, okay, we're back. Okay, this is in the movie. I don't have a problem with that. I get what you're saying. I do. I don't have a problem with it. And in terms of working in the technology, especially with some of the stuff that it was talking about, in terms of that technology and showing how technology can be, manipulated and Lucius Fox being the one to say this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Like because especially at the time, there were a lot of questions about how far are we willing to go and lose our liberties for certain things that are going to go on. And of course, we just dropped the argument and, whatever. But it's a very important and timely sort of thing because it plays into that discussion as well that Harvey Dent is having with Bruce Wayne at the dinner table earlier in the film, where he says, when there were people at the gates, the Romans would suspend the Republic and they would appoint somebody to be a protector of the city. The last person they did that with was Caesar and all of those sorts of things. And so you have this payoff here with it of the difference is who is using it. That's always going to be the difference of who's using the system or the technology or those sorts of things. And again, I get what you're saying, but I think it's a fun bit of thing, and it indulges again his James Bond sort of thing, using the new technology sort of thing.
I'm glad you brought that up because we'll jump to that real quick. But I just want to say I agree with everything you said. I love the plot point. I think it's great. It's just really, I guess I could have lived with the visual aspect of it if it wasn't integrated into the suit. I think that could have been maybe a halfway point I would have agreed on.
And can I add to that with the integration? Okay, so what you've said, John, there, where you're like, when it went out, people went, oh, did the projector break? And I watched it twice in the last 2 days, and both times it happened, I thought something glitched. I thought my Blu-ray was skipping. So you're in the middle of this action sequence, and this director has chosen to take everybody completely out of the movie for a second and think that what they're watching has broken down. So like that, it's an unnecessary aspect. What you're saying is the message is good. The message is good. Too much power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Batman's a good man where he says, I need this once. And Lucius Fox says, I agree you need this once. And then he gives him the power to destroy the technology.
But the thing is, you view it as a betrayal of the audience. I view it as a fun experience to be taken, to be given that heartbeat of, wait, what just happened? Because it, I can argue it. I'm not going to change anybody's mind, but I think that's a lot of fun. And also to speak to the whole integrating into the suit thing, the way I've always approached it wasn't that I was seeing just what Batman was seeing at the time, but I was seeing also what Lucius was seeing at the time. And I was sort of like going in between the two of them. So I've never taken it as Batman was standing there fighting somebody, and then he saw people walking up the stairs, and Morgan Freeman was telling him people were walking up the stairs. It was Batman's in the middle of something, and then it was that Nolan sort of like, quick cut, and we're suddenly seeing what Lucius is seeing. He's like, oh, two going up the stairs, and then it cuts back to Batman and him reacting to it, sort of thing. And so maybe you could make an argument that it doesn't work as well as Nolan intended it to, because it's all, blue CG people moving, and so you don't get the same sense. But that's just always the read that I've had into it, is that I'm flipping back and forth between Lucius's and Batman's perspective on things.
That is an interesting way to look at it. But before we lose momentum on this, I want to talk about the whole Bond aspect. When you talked about it during Batman Begins, about how, like he's a huge Bond fan, and about how Casino Royale wouldn't have existed without Batman Begins. When watching The Dark Knight, and when he's in Hong Kong standing on the building, and he shoots those sticky bombs, and then he jumps, I think that's probably the most Bond moment out of all three films.
Sure,
And
I can see that.
I'm not saying that derogatorily. I'm not saying like, oh, it's Nolan wishing he was directing Bond. It's just there was something about that moment that made me think about not just like Diamonds Are Forever, like when he was, like
Right.
jumping around in Vegas, but there was something about it where it was the mix of the gadgets, the jumping, and the timing. It just felt very Spy. Going to it. Oh, maybe it's because he was in Hong Kong, Like maybe that's why. It's because this is the first time we see Bruce as Batman outside of Gotham. Like maybe it was all of those mixed together.
Which is interesting in and of itself, because there was a novel that came out in the 90s where Batman traveled to like Thailand to break up a kid ring that had touched on Gotham or something like that. And so this plays into that whole idea of, what the Joker says, where he's like, Batman doesn't have a jurisdiction. It doesn't matter if you go to Hyatt in Hong Kong. That's nuts. But what I loved is, I didn't know it at the time, but it's so easy to sit there and say, oh, yeah, that thing about the plane picking the guy up. That's okay. They made that. No. And like the whole Skyhook thing where the plane picks him up from, the special tether and everything like that. One of the first things I did was I was like, I got to find out if that was real or if they invented that. And to find out it was real, but also to find out that the reason they dropped it is because it basically injured and killed everybody that they tested it on. Right? It's like, okay, all right, you have a nod to reality right there. There's enough of a hint of reality to it for it to work. But yeah, they basically said this is not a good idea. We're never going to do this.
Yeah, it was called the Fulton Surface to Air Recovery System. It was developed in the 50s.
Yeah. And it didn't go well.
That's funny.
Now, there's a new Batman film coming out. And starring Robert Pattinson. And it's directed by Matt Reeves, the guy who did the latter two Planet of the Apes films. Fantastic films. And I'm really excited for him to see his take on this, on the Batman universe, and see Pattinson's take on the Batman universe. And one thing that has been continually talked about with leading up to the new Batman film, and to when we get the trailer, we hear the same talking point over and over and over again. Finally, we're getting a detective Batman, and I am excited for that aspect of it. I think that's a great aspect. That's one of the big reasons why we love Batman. He's the world's greatest detective. And what I can't stand about that mentality is people saying, finally, we're getting a detective Batman. When correct, what we should be saying is, finally, we're getting a movie that is devoted to the detective aspect of Batman, or it's a detective storyline. Because we have seen Batman be a detective in several Batman films. Specifically this film. I got into an argument online with someone who was very wrong and very, very full of himself and just wrong in every aspect of it. And it was I wanted him to sit down in his wrongness. And he ended up blocking me because I told him he was just what he was saying was nonsense. But this specifically, like, there's so much of this film that is investigative work. There's so much of this film that is detective work. And so I hate that this gets glossed over, that people don't look at this, or they ignore it, or they say it's not real detective work. But he's like, the guy's dealing with ballistics and going to a crime scene and picking up, like thumbprints and everything like that. And so what did you guys think of that aspect of Batman coming forth in this film? Do you think it was enough to say it was his detective work done right? Should we have gotten more? Should we have gotten less? Is this something that shows us that it's not that Pattinson's won't be the first detective? Like, give me your thoughts on that.
I don't have a problem with the detective work in here, aside from the fact that I don't think they could pull a fingerprint off of that. But, I mean, that's the suspension of disbelief in the movie. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, anybody who's seen CSI on CBS, can say weekly, I don't think they can do that.
You're absolutely right. That whole fingerprint thing is nonsense. But whatever, it gets him where he needs to be at the time.
Right,
but it is detective work.
It is,
yeah, absolutely.
And Batman's always done detective work. I mean, like back in Batman '89 with Michael Keaton, when he's got Vicky Vale and he throws down that thing about all the Axis chemical stuff, Like, I don't know, Batman's always done detective stuff. I mean, maybe this new Batman film, The Batman, is going to be solely a detective story, and that's okay too.
I think that's
Right.
great. Yeah, it's just I think we as a fandom, and I feel like people in pop culture, like people who are slightly even interested in pop culture, there's just these talking points that they just pick up. They hear it all the time. And then instead of having one iota of individual thought, they get told what they're supposed to think, and they get told what they're supposed to regurgitate. And that can be in the positive too, where like I think The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book movie of all time. I think that because I feel it. I don't think that just because a lot of other people hold that opinion. And because we're doing this podcast, I think that's gives me credence enough in my own opinion. But it's just, there's so much within the Batman fandom, pop culture fandom, superhero movie fandom, film fandom, where it's just like, you're supposed to say these things. And it just bothers me.
Well, I mean, and you're absolutely correct. And just to pile on in terms of the detective work, like he's running vocal and face analysis on the Joker to try to determine who his real personality is, right? What his actual name is and everything like that. And like he's doing things that we would expect a cop to do. Where it's like, okay, run it through the face analysis, analyze fingerprints, let's do the ballistics, let's do all those sorts of things. And like his detective work is what takes him sometimes from point A to point B to figure out what's going on with everything. And he's even got wiretaps and stuff like that. Like, I mean, if anything, he's like a one-man police department, like, but a virtuous one. So it's like, I don't know. I'm saying all that just to say that I agree. Like, I think it's nonsense to say that he doesn't do any detective work in here. Another thing that's nonsense, so long as we're talking about nonsense things that people have said, is I actually have a friend who is not on fire about The Dark Knight. He thinks it's good. It's not great. And one of his big complaints, and I like climb the wall, fall down, and climb it again and scream, is he says that there's only one well-lit sequence in the entire film because, in his opinion, Batman is too easy to see most of the time. And so the only scene that is truly great is the interrogation room, where it's dark and you can't see Batman and the light comes on and Batman's there. In his mind, that's how Batman should always be. And I'm just sitting there just paralyzed with this thought of, so do you want the scene where he's talking to Gordon and Dent on the rooftop? You don't want to see him at that point? There's still a point to him being, like it's, I don't understand the complaint, but he thinks that his complaint, and I'm saying that I'm sharing this because I want to see Tristan's reaction to this. He thinks that the movie is too bright. And
too bright?
Yes, he does. He thinks it's too bright.
I mean, as opposed to, to other Batman films that we've gotten?
I don't know. Because I just sort of shut down, because that's what he keeps going back to, is that the interrogation room scene is the only true Batman scene because you can't see him and then the lights come on and he's there.
So, so using that logic, does that mean once the lights come on and then he slams Joker's head down, is it no longer a good scene because you can see him for the rest of it?
No, it's okay because it's justifiable to see him for the rest of that because the lights were turned on. I think what he's trying to say is that in any scene where Batman, like for instance, in the bank vault.
Okay, I get that.
Batman should be, I don't know, hiding in a corner, instead of just standing there in the doorway. And it's like, well, no, his sudden appearance is supposed to be what's
right
amazing to you. And his sudden disappearances, it's not supposed to be the fact that like he's got a cloaking field around him.
Right.
And it's like, where is that voice coming from?
The best parts of the Batman comics I read were the pages that were just the white bubbles with a complete black. I loved that. It was just bubbles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That kind of makes me think of that makes me think of that Star Trek The Next Generation episode where Data is practicing his Shakespeare in the holodeck, and Picard is there and he's not even looking at him, and Data stops and goes like, what's the deal? Like, did I lose your interest? He's like, Data, I can't even see you. He says, well, like
Yeah.
this amount of illumination and these torches would be applicable to the time. Like they're, like this is the amount of light that would be in this scene. And he's like, yeah, but there's a moment of theatricality. Like your audience has to see what's going on.
Exactly. And the thing, I'm sorry to go down this road, but there was I can't remember the name of the play or whatever, but there was actually back when realism was becoming a thing in theater and they were starting to stage more realistic stuff, less melodramatic and everything like that. There was actually like a 1-act play or something like that where at the end of it, the actor is completely invisible except for a small window in the wall because the director keeps adding stuff on. And so I think that speaks to, your point about theatricality, where I'm not going to be interested in a movie where I can't see the character
right
and what's happening. And I don't know if part of it might go back to the way Burton shot the 1989 Batman, because I guess Batman was more in shadow in certain scenes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that was more of a stylistic choice. And we again have Nolan having Batman inhabit the quote unquote real world. And so we know that, I don't have my house, drenched in darkness unless I'm asleep sort of thing, So,
well, I can't wait to hear what your friend thinks about The Dark Knight Rises when he's walking around in the middle of the street in broad daylight.
Yes. Yep. We'll get to that.
So, okay, we have so much more to talk about, but yet we've been going for over an hour here. I mean, there's so much packed in there. This movie is so dense when it comes to story structure and theme. And one thing that I want to talk about is, because we have talked about Heath Ledger's performance, but one thing that I want to talk about is like the little things that he brought to the table. One thing is like one thing that always sticks out to me is in the hospital scene. If you look closely, he was wearing a "I believe in Harvey Dent" sticker.
Yep,
that was Heath Ledger's idea. Like he just slaps that on. The movie is filled with like little things like that. Like, and if you listen to actors talk about Heath Ledger, like there was one interview I remember where like the interviewer was talking with Christian Bale and said like don't worry, I know you've been asked about this a lot, so I'm not gonna make you talk about Heath Ledger. And Christian Bale interrupts and says, no, I want to talk about Heath Ledger. I want to talk about Heath. We need to talk about Heath. Everyone had something really interesting to say. And there was like the guy who tried to beat up Joker in the cell, but then ended up getting taken by the neck, by like the piece of glass to his neck, and saying like, shoot him, it's my fault, and everything like that. Like his name is Heath as well, and he just had nothing. But he said he's like yeah, some days he would be. Like he'd be in character for about 7 minutes and then just kind of like walk around, and then like he'd be in character and then like he would start the scene when he was ready. He's like, but then other times he, like when we first met, he was just like, oh, hey, my name's Heath too. It's really great. I think we're going to have fun today. And so like you have these two different versions where like Aaron Eckhart was talking about how, like in that hospital scene, Heath Ledger is just like, he's just kind of like mumbling to himself and like getting into character and just walking around for a couple minutes. And then he starts the scene and he kind of gets real close to Aaron Eckhart's face, so much so that he kind of throws up his arm in kind of in shock, and then Heath, the Joker, grabs it. That they kept it in the movie, and like apparently Aaron Eckhart said that it surprised him, and that's why he did it. And then like without skipping a beat, Ledger grabs his arm and then like keeps doing the scene. And then when they yelled rap or when they yelled cut, he's like, that's what acting's all about, and then he leaves.
Yeah.
And it's just, and also like the Purell bit at the end of the hospital scene, like that was all Ledger, like that's the kind of thing, like that's where, because I've seen some criticisms of this portrayal of the Joker where he's just a psychopath. Like he's not the Joker, he's not funny. He's not over the top. He's just a psychopath. And that's where I disagree, because like those little moments with the Purell, with the Harvey Dent sticker and so many others, like that's where you see the little playfulness come through.
I think this is a very funny Joker in certain moments. Maybe that says something about me, but I'll go back to that first showing when he says, "How about a magic trick?" And then he puts the pencil in the guy's eye, half the audience is, revolting in horror. And I think I had the loudest laugh in the crowd. So I was like that. And I'm laughing about it right now. I'm like, that is funny. It would have sucked if it happened to me. But boy, that's funny when it's in that movie right now.
My mom told me, like, I was somehow that came up in conversation, and she's like, "Oh, I turned the movie off when that happened." And I said, "You turned it off?" I clapped.
Yeah. That because it's such an incredible moment, because it does give you that's the Joker's humor. Is it's dark, man. I mean, like, even if you go back to Burton's Batman, and like I'm not trying to draw, but like he kills a guy and then has a conversation with him and says, "Oh, you're a vicious bastard, Ritelli, and I'm glad you're dead." And he goes off laughing. That's funny too, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like he just literally burned a guy into a corpse, and he's making that joke. Like that is the Joker.
One of the things that I really do love about this movie is the fact that it's just a PG-13 film, and there's still so much stuff in it. Like, I'm glad that they didn't go over the top with the gore. I love gore in movies. I've got no problem with it. But I think it's a really interesting way to tell this story, because the Joker can be such a violent character. There's no blood in the scene with the pencil.
Right.
Okay, when the guy goes to attack him that you just said, the guy's name was Heath, and he says it was all my fault. We don't see the attack. It cuts, and then he comes back and he's escaped already. It led to some really interesting beats in the story that I really, truly loved. And I think that's what really brings this movie over the top for me. I don't need an R movie every time. So I love that. I love that.
Well, even when he kills Gamble, like that's an incredible scene where he's telling the first story about his dad and everything like that. And what you get the reaction shot. He looks at the henchman and says, "Why so serious?" And then you see the guy's face, and then Gamble fall over. And it's like, well, wait, where did he stab? Like, what's going, where?
I actually have a problem with that scene.
Really?
Not so much the scene. Let me rephrase that. I have a problem with that edit, because that scene specifically, and I only found this out later, like this actually confirmed my suspicion, where that scene specifically needed to be recut to get that PG-13 rating.
Oh.
Because they filmed it where you actually see the knife go through his cheek, where he actually cuts Gamble, and it was just like, and like the censors told him, the MPAA told him, like, hey, listen, like, if you want to make a PG-13 rating, you got to cut that out. And to me, when seeing that, it always felt like something was missing, because it felt like we were cutting away too much. Like when he said, he's like, "Why so serious?" And then we hear that huge sting from Zimmer, and then he just falls to the floor. I'm not saying I needed gore, but we needed something else. There was a missing shot there. There was a missing moment there. And it felt like an editing mistake. It felt like, oh crap, oh man, like we got to edit around this, and we don't have any coverage. That's what it felt like to me. And the only other time that I felt like there was not an editing mistake, but like to the point where, like, I Brandon, like you were talking about, like I like that it's PG-13, because I feel like Batman belongs to everybody. I want the 13-year-olds to be able to go and see a Batman film, and so I like that there wasn't any gore. But in the bank scene, the guy, like the manager at the bank, is shot with several rounds in his legs and arms. There's not a single drop of blood on the floor.
That does not bother me in the slightest. Yeah.
How does that not bother you?
Because it's a PG-13 movie. Like, I don't know. Like, there's so much PG-13 out there that you don't need it, and that's what I'm okay with it. I don't know.
It doesn't bother me, because there are so many different factors, including caliber of the gun that he's firing. Like, I think that there's an expectation that's set by movies for exactly how much gore and splatter there is with a gunshot wound. And I'm not trying to say that like they're pleasant experiences or anything like that, but I like it's not, you're not necessarily going to have like the big exploding heads that
I'm not saying I wanted Quentin Tarantino.
I know I'm and that's exactly where I was going with it. But I do. I think that it is just like you mentioned CSI earlier and the science-y stuff and everything like that. Like there's an expectation that's set mentally with people because of what is common in in the entertainment that they watch. And it's like, that's not really how it always plays out. So if somebody gets shot with a couple of rounds and they're not, it's not like 6 gallons of blood everywhere. Okay, that's fine.
Hey, okay, you're taking what I'm saying to an extreme here. I'm saying
not.
the
Not at
man.
all.
Yeah, I didn't say I wanted 6
No,
gallons
I'm getting
of blood
I'm getting
spraying
justice
everywhere.
for Maggie Gyllenhaal is what I'm saying. That's what I'm doing.
All I'm saying is like the guy was shot with 6 rounds on a white linoleum floor.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single speck was out of place. That I think is ridiculous.
So going back to the gamble attack. So for me, what I think of when that happens and the way that they've cut it is that at the last second, Joker changed his mind and slit his throat. Because if the guy just cuts his cheek, he's not falling like that. Like it looks like Gamble's dead from the way that I see it. So like I don't know. So to kill the character and not have it, I don't know. Like I just really love that stuff. I don't know. I just think it was really, really well done. So
well, and that I think what you're saying kind of gives credence to what I'm saying. It seems like an editing mistake because you can't. There's no time. There's no space in order to change his position from that shot.
True.
But see, I'm just following on Brandon's side with this because like it's just, I guess, just a mental expectation of like, I'm not expecting them to show that. And so it's like, okay,
I don't want them
sting.
to. I didn't want them to.
No, I'm saying you're a bloodthirsty monster. You're talking about all the blood that you want to see that you're not seeing.
No, but I think it's great when you have when they give you your imagination, because I can't stand gore. I don't want a lot of blood. I don't want anything like that. Like, that I have delicate sensibilities. It's just
I do.
The arm placement and the movement from where his arm was to where it ended up in the span of no time at all is what bothered me. It felt like an editing mistake. Not like give me the gore, but just it felt like an editing mistake.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes. I think it would be, because I know that, we've been going on and everything, but I think that one of the things that needs to be mentioned before we wrap up is what an incredible influence Michael Mann's film Heat obviously has on The Dark Knight. And the fact that I believe the actor's name is William Fichtner, the bank manager, is basically a nod to Heat. These are films which I think would be fascinating to put together in some sort of like fantasy double feature sort of situation, because up to and including the way that the opening sequence plays out, like it is very obviously influenced. And I think Nolan has gone so far as to say that he was influenced, in certain regards. And you have as well a further refinement of the adversarial relationship between the main characters, which we first get to with Insomnia, of the one-on-one, the polar opposites going against each other. And you have Batman as the student of Ra's al Ghul sort of thing. And then you have the Prestige, which is a further refinement of it, of I stand for, we're both magicians and we're both trying to control everything and we're working at opposite odds. And then we have that next evolution here with Batman and the Joker. And it's just, what's so fascinating about it to me is that it just seems like such a natural evolution. Like it's almost like you see Nolan continually hitting that point, and then it gets here and it feels like, okay, he figured out how to do this. He had not figured out, that's the wrong way to say it. But he gets to this point where he's more confident in the way that he structures that sort of adversarial conflict and perfects it, I'd say.
I haven't seen Heat, so I can't speak to it. I mean, I've got it over on my shelf. I just haven't seen it yet. So
even the color palette is similar.
Yeah, I saw Heat a couple of days after I had my wisdom teeth extracted, and it kept me awake and engaged the whole time. So that should let you know what I think of that film.
All right, before we wrap up, because we've been going, this has been our longest episode to date with good reason. Before we wrap it, I want to get your guys' opinion on this, because both of you have read, Batman comic books like I have, and some more than others. But I want to know, why the heck, if you excuse my language, did Chris Nolan choose James Jr. to be the kid that they focus on in that final scene, and not little Barbara? What's going on there? We could have gotten Barbara as a young person who sees the Dark Knight and starts to idolize him and wants to become something more, and then could become... I'm not saying we needed to see Batgirl. I'm not saying we needed to see Barbara Gordon become Batgirl. I'm not saying that at all. But it seems like a huge missed opportunity when you're dealing with Jim Gordon's kids to not focus on the girl.
I was very confused on this scene because, like, I didn't look too closely, I guess, but I thought he had 2 sons, and his wife's name was Barbara.
His wife's name is Barbara. He has a boy and a girl. They're both named after each parent.
Okay, I didn't catch that. I know that his daughter becomes Batgirl. I do know that, but I was going to ask at one point, but I didn't think it was important enough to the conversation. I'm like, didn't his daughter become that? And why does he have 2 sons? So I don't know. I must have missed something when I was watching it. So I agree. If he had a Barbara daughter, he should have done that. So
I don't know. Something like that feels too... that would have taken me out of it, to be honest with you. Like, if you want to set your eyes toward Warner Brothers says, no, we're going to make 20 movies in this timeline. This is still a traumatic enough event for for young Barbara Gordon to have it shape her outlook on everything. Like, it doesn't need to be her. That's, that Two-Face has under the gun, as it were. I don't know that he's trying to say anything with it necessarily, other than James is just the favorite, which I think a lot of the trauma that happens in this makes one of the story points in The Dark Knight Rises makes a hell of a lot of sense. It's not the way anybody wanted the story to go, but when it happens, when they mention it in the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises, I think for a second I go, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, I can buy that. I think it's fan service, and I'm not saying that in a nasty way. I'm not saying that in the typical sort of like, oh, you want fan service. It would have taken me out of the drama of the scene if I'm sitting there going, oh, that's Barbara Gordon. Yeah, she's going to become Bat. Like, it wasn't a necessary aspect to add. That's just my take.
That's interesting because the opposite is true for me, where while I'm watching that scene, it takes me out of it because I'm just like, why the heck are they not using Barbara in this scene? That's funny. That's funny that we both would have had the same reaction to the exact opposite of what we're saying.
I don't think at the scale though where I would have disliked the scene or the film though. Like, it's one of those things where
I hate the scene. It's the worst thing in the movie because they didn't use Barbara.
Yes, we're going to retract everything we said about how great all the performances were in the scene and everything. No, it's one of those things where I do think there are aspects of this where if like you sit down and you're like, well, does that really make sense? But Nolan is creating an experience here. He's not creating something that is, a logic puzzle necessarily, because there are so many things where if I sit down and I think it through, I'm like, that just doesn't make sense, right? But you can do that with anything. And it's about the experience and about the flow. And I think that's what is so right about this film is that other ancillary stuff is cast aside in favor of what is going to get us that reaction, that experience, and that flow. And that's what makes it perfect.
The thing that drives me bonkers, I messaged Tristan, was I'm like, why are there 2 planes for the escape sequence in Tokyo? The one's like a water boat that's silver, and the other one's this white military plane. I'm like, how does he get 2 planes out of this? And Tristan did some mental gymnastics to come up with an answer that I
mental
forgot.
Gymnastics.
Oh no! He specifically says in the film that he's going to use South Korean smugglers to get him into the place, and that the CIA guy is the one who's going to take him out. The former CIA guy is the one who's going to take him out.
And it's Hong Kong, not Tokyo.
Correct.
And do I really need to point on a map?
I'm sorry. Draw me a map. I don't know. I must have missed it in the movie.
Do I need to point on a map where Arizona is and where Hong Kong is and where Batman would be in Gotham? Why would a plane in Arizona that's getting ready in Arizona fly to Gotham just to pick him up that isn't a seaplane, then fly from Gotham that isn't a seaplane from the water back all the way to Hong Kong? How would that work? Why would that be necessary?
Well, where's Gotham?
It's on the East Coast,
It's not a
man.
real city.
It's on the East Coast.
Chicago's on the East Coast?
Okay. listen, you're being like a mutual friend of ours, and Tristan knows who I'm talking about right
Yeah,
now.
you're trying real hard.
You know exactly who I'm talking about, and so I'm going to walk away from this. But Gotham is real because it has to be real for the sake of this, and given its climate and everything like that, it's got to be east of the Rockies, big time. And anyway,
I'll concede because you guys know this movie better than I. I'll absolutely concede to your guys' knowledge. So, absolutely, 100%.
And that
That's
it was
wise.
explained in the scene within the movie. But
And I probably missed it. I'll freely admit it. So, yes.
anyway, okay. So
Yes.
before we wrap up, I think we need to do our normal routine of what are we giving this movie. I've already shown my hand and said 5 stars. John, I'm guessing 2.5, 3 for you. Is that right?
1-star movie. It's just, there are so many things. No Barbara Gordon, Maggie Gyllenhaal. Good Lord. Why did you even have that? You should have just cut the whole character.
Also,
Just
the
absolutely
editing of the gamble scene. You're right.
Oh
You're
my
right.
gosh. Like it grates on me. It's so terrible. It's absolutely awful. No, but seriously, and we didn't even talk about how the score is like one of the best scores done like in the last several decades. So, whatever. But like, this is firing on all cylinders. You couldn't ask more from a film. Absolutely.
Brandon.
I still give this 5 stars. I love this movie. This movie is fantastic, and I am completely captivated every time I watch it. And I mean, like the things that I sit here and nitpick on, I only because I just watched this movie twice back to back. Am I like, wait a minute, why are those planes different? And I must have missed something else, but clearly not as captivating as I just said it was because I missed a whole bunch of plot points, I guess, but whatever. 5 stars. I do like it. So, but it didn't dethrone The Prestige.
Oh,
Interesting.
Okay,
Fascinating.
interesting. Oh yeah. So are we going to give rankings now?
I mean, this is
I can
definitely
give mine
tops.
if you want. I got mine here.
Yeah.
So-
Go for it.
So mine, Prestige, Dark Knight, Batman Begins, Memento, Insomnia following right now.
I mean, for me, it's just you put the Dark Knight at the top, then the Prestige, then Batman Begins, then Memento, then Insomnia, then following. But they're all great films.
What puts Prestige over the top for me is the period drama. I
Sure.
just think he just did such a great job of it, and it's such a beautifully stunning film.
No way I'm going to dispute you. I understand what you're saying. Sure.
For me, it goes Dark Knight, then Batman Begins, then Prestige, then Memento, then Insomnia, then following.
So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Inception next.
Oh man, I cannot wait. Man, I'm so excited. I mean, like when we hit Batman Begins, like actually once we got past Insomnia, I was like, here we go. Like it's just going to be a thrill ride from one from one movie to the next. Oh, speaking of which, I was watching this movie with my wife, and the scene where the SWAT team is being chased by Joker, and it ends with saying hit me and everything like that, and the Batpod flipping around. My wife, who does not say this kind of stuff lightly and did not say it derogatorily, even though like Martin Scorsese was saying it about comic book films, about how it's just like a theme park. She said that with excitement and respect, where she said that scene, like this scene alone, it's a roller coaster. She's like, it's a thrill ride, and she said it with complete earnestness. And it made me so happy to hear that. I mean, she loves Batman just as much as I do, but it's just the genuine emotions that you get from that scene. And that's what I want to say about this movie overall. The genuine emotions that you get, the genuine excitement, the event filmmaking, just the pure joy and pleasure it is to watch this, and watch this for like the 25th time that I have last night. It's so much fun. And I want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much for subscribing. Make sure to go to thenerdputty.com to check out all of our backlogged episodes, as well as all of our other shows on the network. We have something coming out every single day of the week. You can absolutely find something for yourself and for your friends. We have shows about TV shows and movies and indie movies and big blockbuster movies, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Star Trek. We got something for everyone. And please let us know what you think of our little show. Go to thenerdparty.com/contact, select our show, and then fill out the form. It'll send us an email. Brandon, where can we find you online?
Oh, well, when you're not doing magic tricks, you can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella, and I got a couple of podcasts. One is called Franchise Fatigue, where I cover movies, remakes, and sequels with my friend Zach Moore. I have a show called Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast, where we cover all the new Star Trek shows, and a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, where very much like this one, we go through Hitch's films in chronological order.
John.
You can find me as Kessel Junkie on your social network of choice. I encourage you to find me on Letterboxd, KESSELJUNKIE. You can also find me dropping artwork and writings over on kesseljunkie.com. And here on the network, you can find me regularly appearing as co-host on Aggressive Negotiations, a Parsec Award-winning Star Wars podcast with my dear friend Matthew Rushing. And Tristan, where can everybody find you?
You can find me all over the nerdparty.com. You can also find me under the username The Insane Robin on Twitter, as well as Letterboxd. Once again, I want to say thank you to our listeners. It's so much fun to know that you guys are listening and that you like our show and that you like what we're doing. And so please make sure to subscribe so that you can listen to us next week as we talk about Inception.
Or does it talk about us?
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.